The first man my family sent to drag me out of the ballroom reached for my throat while my mother was still applauding the son who had replaced me. His hand stopped 3 inches from my skin, not because he changed his mind. A red line appeared in my vision, running from his shoulder through his elbow and ending at the place where his wrist would break if I moved exactly 7 inches to my left. A second line showed the path of his knee. A third marked the security guard behind him, who was already drawing a collapsible baton. Then a voice without sound formed inside my head. Absolute violence awakened. Intent confirmed. Measure required. Excess returns to the wielder. I had spent 22 years learning that violence belonged to people with more money, stronger names, and locked doors. In that instant, every moving body in the Vale Hotel ballroom became a clean equation. My father stood beneath a wall of white orchids with one hand on Ethan's shoulder. Cameras faced them from 3 sides. Behind them, a screen displayed the new logo of Vale Aegis and the sentence that had finally made my place in the family official. Ethan Vale, sole heir and future chairman. I had not interrupted the announcement. I had not shouted. I had only asked my mother whether the signature on the transfer document was hers. She had looked at me as if I were a stain on the floor. Then she had said, "You were gone for 20 years, Lucas. Ethan was our son every day you were not here. Please do not make this uglier." Ethan had smiled before telling security to remove me. Now the first guard's fingers were almost at my collar. I stepped left, caught his wrist, and turned it until his own momentum folded him over the edge of a banquet table. I stopped 1 degree before the red line became black. His knees struck the carpet. The baton behind me cut through the air, but I was already lowering my head. I drove my shoulder into the second guard's chest with exactly enough force to empty his lungs, caught the baton as it fell, and slid it across the floor. No broken bones, no blood. 2 men down in less than 3 seconds. The ballroom went so quiet that I heard a champagne bubble burst in a glass beside me. My father, Richard Vale, did not look frightened. He looked fascinated. That frightened me more. "So it is real," he said. My mother turned toward him. "Richard, what does that mean?" Before he could answer, Ethan seized Maya Cross by the upper arm. She had been standing near the stage in a black dress with a silver clasp at one shoulder, close enough to hear every word, and far enough to pretend she was only Vale Aegis's youngest risk analyst. Ethan pulled her against his side and pressed his thumb into the inside of her arm. She did not cry out. She looked directly at me. "Do not move, Lucas," Ethan said. "You came here for the company. You can leave without the girl." Maya's expression hardened. "I am not a thing you can keep. Take your hand off me." He tightened his grip. 5 red lines converged across his body. One ended at his wrist, one at his jaw. 2 showed how he might use Maya as a shield. The last line did not point toward him at all. It ran from my father to a discreet black device beneath the stage. "Threat network detected," the silent voice told me. "Source concealed. Stolen vessel active. Architect observing." I knew which label belonged to Ethan. I also knew which one belonged to my father. What I did not know was why the power inside me recognized both of them. 8 months earlier, I had entered Vale Tower through the employee door because no one had told the lobby staff that Richard Vale's biological son was coming home. It was raining hard that morning. Water ran from my jacket onto the gray tile, while a receptionist made 3 calls and carefully avoided saying my last name. I had been Lucas Reed for most of my life. Reed was the name printed on my foster records, my community college ID, and the ambulance company badge I had worn until the week before. Vale was a fact proven by 2 DNA tests and still felt like a coat cut for someone else's shoulders. Eleanor Vale came down for me herself. My grandmother was 73, narrow as a blade, and dressed in the same dark blue that appeared in every Vale Aegis advertisement. She did not hug me. She stopped an arm's length away and studied my face. "You have Helena's eyes," she said, "and my father's habit of standing where you can see every exit. Working nights on an ambulance teaches that." Perhaps, her gaze dropped to my hands. Or perhaps some things wait in blood. I thought she meant family resemblance. Later, I learned that Eleanor almost never meant only one thing. She took me to the private elevator. On the 42nd floor, Richard and Helena were waiting in a conference room with Ethan. A wall of glass showed Chicago under a sheet of rain. The room smelled of coffee no one had touched. My mother stood first. For 1 second, hope erased 20 years from her face. She crossed half the room, lifted both hands as if she meant to hold my cheeks, and stopped before touching me. Her fingers curled back toward her palms. "Lucas," she whispered. It was the first time I had heard my birth name in her voice. That small sound hurt more than I expected. Richard remained seated. He had silver at his temples, and the calm posture of a man who expected every room to become his. The independent laboratory confirmed the result this morning. "There is no reasonable dispute. You are our biological son." "That is a warm way to say it," Eleanor told him. "Warmth does not change evidence." Ethan sat across from me. At 23, he had already spent 4 years appearing beside Richard in business magazines. We were almost the same height, but nothing else about us matched. His blonde hair was carefully imperfect. His charcoal suit fit like it had been built around him. He looked at me with open curiosity, then stood and offered his hand. "I guess this is the strangest way to get a brother," he said. I shook it. His grip tightened a little too late to feel accidental. "I have had stranger mornings," I said. That made Helena laugh once, though tears were gathering along her lower lashes. Ethan released my hand and moved to her side. He did it smoothly, as if taking his usual mark on a stage. She touched his sleeve without looking. I noticed. I told myself not to resent it. He had not stolen me from a hospital. He had been a child too. That was the first excuse I made for him. Richard explained the official story. A nurse had told Helena that her premature baby died minutes after delivery. Records from the private clinic had been damaged in a fire 6 years later. 3 months after the supposed death, Richard and Helena adopted Ethan through a closed placement. My DNA profile, uploaded after I searched for medical history, had triggered a match with a sample Eleanor kept in a private genealogy account. Why did you keep a sample there? I asked. Eleanor folded her hands over the head of her cane. Because I never believed you died. The answer turned the room colder. Helena sat down. You told me the investigators found nothing. They found what someone paid them to find, Eleanor said. I continued privately. Richard's jaw moved once. This is not the day for old accusations. It is exactly the day for them, I said. His attention settled on me. It was not affection, but it was the first honest interest he had shown. You have my directness. I learned it from people who did not have assistants to soften every sentence. Ethan smiled, but his eyes did not. Helena finally came around the table and touched my wrist. Her fingers were cool. Come home with us, she said. Not because of the company or the name. Just come home. Let me know you. That was what I had wanted since I found the first DNA match. I wanted it enough to ignore the way Richard watched her hand off. I wanted it enough to move into the guest wing of a mansion that should have contained my childhood. I wanted it enough to call a room home when every photograph inside it showed Ethan growing up in my place. The first weeks were almost gentle. Helena asked what I ate, what music I liked, and whether I still woke when I heard sirens. She showed me a box of baby clothes she had never thrown away. Richard arranged a position for me in emergency planning at Vale Aegis, though I told him I did not need charity. He said learning the company was not charity if I intended to carry the name. Ethan took me to a basketball game and introduced me as his brother before I was ready. The crowd in the private suite accepted the explanation because wealthy families were allowed to have surprising secrets. On the drive home, he handed me a glass of whiskey from the car's cabinet. They are going to compare us, he said. I cannot stop them. You could refuse the name. He said it lightly. I looked at his reflection in the dark window. Is that what you want? I want to know what you want. At that point, I still believed the difference mattered. I set the whiskey down untouched. I want the truth about why I disappeared. I want a relationship with my mother, if she wants one with me. I want work I earned. And Vale Aegis? I met the company 2 weeks ago. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one I have. Ethan leaned back and smiled. Then we can be brothers until you find a different answer. The next morning, I met Maya in a training room beneath Vale Tower. I had been told to attend an assessment for the company's executive protection program. When I arrived, a woman in a gray sweater was adjusting sensors on a padded striking post. Her black hair was tied high, and a pencil rested behind one ear. She looked younger than the senior analysts I had met, but the tablet in her hand displayed a risk model dense enough to make my eyes ache. Lucas Vale? She asked. Depending on who is asking. Maya Cross. Behavioral risk and systems testing. She looked at my boots. You favor your right leg when you stop. Old injury? Old habit. That usually means yes plus a boundary. I can work with that. She did not offer her hand. She pointed to a square on the floor and explained that the sensors would measure reaction time while light panels simulated threats. Her voice was even, with none of the careful pity I had started hearing from Vale employees. Did Richard ask you to find out whether I am dangerous? I asked. Maya met my eyes. He asked me to establish a baseline. Dangerous is not a baseline. It is a relationship between capacity, intent, access, and pressure. That sounded rehearsed. It sounded expensive. Vale paid for the degree. I laughed before I could stop myself. The corner of her mouth lifted. The first test was simple. A panel flashed, and I touched the matching sensor. Then 2 panels flashed with a half-second delay. After 10 rounds, the pattern changed. A tone sounded behind me while a light appeared at my left. I turned before either signal finished. Maya's smile disappeared. She increased the speed. My body kept finding the next signal before I consciously understood it. I had noticed similar moments on ambulance calls. Catching a falling oxygen tank without seeing it tip. Moving a partner before a violent patient swung. Knowing which relative in a crowded kitchen was about to interfere. I had called it experience. The machine called it impossible. Maya ended the test and checked every sensor. Did someone tell you the sequence? No. Can you do it again? Probably. That is an irritating answer. It is the honest one. She reset the program with a random seed and stood closer to watch my eyes. We ran it again. Halfway through, I became aware of her hand near my shoulder, not touching, only tracking how early I turned. The awareness disturbed me more than the lights. I missed a signal. Maya noticed. Interesting, she said. Do not put that in your report. I was going to write that distraction produces normal delay. You looked pleased about it. She stepped back, but the space she left felt deliberate. I like finding limits. Limits make power safer. That sentence stayed with me. Richard reviewed my results that afternoon. He asked no questions about my work history or the emergencies I had handled. He stared at the reaction time graph. Has this ever happened under physical threat? He asked. I have fast reflexes. That is not what I asked. I thought of a foster father who had thrown a plate when I was 14. I had moved before it left his hand. I thought of a patient who had hidden a knife under a blanket. My partner saw the blade. I saw the shoulder move first. Sometimes, I said. Richard pressed one finger to the graph. We will continue testing. Maya said the assessment was complete. Maya works for me. When I told her that the next day, she went still. I work for Vale Aegis, she said. Those are not always the same thing. I should have asked what she meant. Instead, I let the warning pass because Helena had invited me to lunch, and I was still measuring my days by every hour she chose to spend with me. Wanting a mother made me patient in ways that were not healthy. Helena and I ate in the mansion's glass conservatory. Rain clicked against the roof, soft enough to hear the small sounds between us. She asked about my childhood, then flinched whenever I answered honestly. I learned to edit. I told her about the kind foster mother who taught me to cook, not the home where the pantry was locked. I told her about community college, not the nights I slept in my car between shifts. Each edited truth let her breathe easier. Each one also taught her that loving me would not cost much. Halfway through lunch, Ethan entered without knocking. He kissed Helena's cheek and placed a folder beside her plate. The foundation board needs your signature, he said. Then he looked at the second cup. I did not know this was private. It is not, Helena answered too quickly. Sit with us. He took the chair beside her. Within minutes, they were discussing a charity event they had hosted for 10 years. They shared names, jokes, and a memory about a collapsed cake. I sat across from them with a story about my first apartment unfinished in my mouth. Ethan eventually turned to me. Sorry. Family history. The words were polite. The message was not. Helena touched my hand. We are making new history now. I nodded because correcting her would have made her feel guilty, and I was still protecting her from the consequences of losing me. That was my second mistake. The third came 2 weeks later, when Maya showed me a security clip of myself striking an employee in a parking garage. The video had no sound. It showed a man stepping close, my hand moving, and his body hitting the side of a car. The angle hid the screwdriver he had raised toward my ribs. It also ended before I called building security and waited with him until they arrived. The full recording was overwritten, Maya said. We were alone in a monitoring room, lit by 6 blue screens. This 40-second segment was copied before deletion and attached to an internal concern report. Whose report? The account belongs to Ethan's executive office. I looked at her. Belongs to, or was used by? Her attention sharpened. Good distinction. I cannot prove who submitted it. The man had a weapon. Security took it. The incident log says there was no weapon recovered. That was impossible. I had watched a guard seal the screwdriver in a clear evidence pouch. Maya turned away from the screens and leaned against the desk. Richard asked me this morning whether your aggression could be escalating. He had already seen this clip. And what did you say? I said a silent partial recording cannot establish intent. She paused. Then I asked you to come here instead of warning you by message because executive communications are being mirrored. The room seemed smaller. Are you risking your job for me? I am doing my job. That is not an answer. Maya folded her arms. It is the safest honest answer I have. She had thrown my own sentence back at me. I stepped closer before thinking. She did not retreat, but she lifted one hand between us. Do not confuse trust with access, she said quietly. I stopped. Her hand remained between our bodies for another second. Then she lowered it. Thank you for saying it clearly, I told her. Thank you for listening the first time. That was the moment I started wanting her. Not when her hand hovered near my shoulder in the training room. Not when she smiled at my irritation. I wanted her when she drew a line and expected me to respect it. We reviewed the clip frame by frame. At the edge of one image, a reflection in the car window showed the screwdriver. It was blurred, but its shape and the man's raised arm contradicted the report. Maya exported the frame to an offline drive and wrote down its verification hash. This does not prove who altered the record, she said. It proves the short clip was misleading. Why would Ethan do this if I have not asked for his position? Because positions are not only threatened by requests. I looked at the frozen image of my own body in motion. Richard knew about my reflexes before I arrived. What makes you say that? He was not surprised by the assessment. He was disappointed it did not show more. Maya placed the drive in my palm and closed my fingers over it. Her touch lasted less than a second, but the warmth stayed. Then stop giving him tests he controls, she said. I should have listened. Instead, when Richard invited me to a private facility outside the city, I went because he framed it as an opportunity to earn my place. The facility belonged to a Vale Aegis research subsidiary. Its lower level contained a circular room with padded walls, ceiling cameras, and mechanical arms used to test protective equipment. Richard stood behind reinforced glass with Maya and Ethan. Eleanor had refused to attend. Helena had not been told. This is a response simulation, Richard said through a speaker. No live weapons. The system will increase speed until you signal to stop. Maya pressed the communication control. Lucas, I have not approved the final sequence. You can leave. Richard muted her microphone. I saw her turn on him. Ethan caught her elbow when she reached for the control again. She pulled free and moved away from him. I should have walked out then. Pride kept me in the circle. Begin, I said. The first mechanical arm swung a padded bar at shoulder height. I ducked. A second thrust toward my chest. I turned. For 30 seconds, the pattern remained humanly possible. Then, a third arm activated behind me. My body knew before the warning light changed. I stepped between two strikes, caught a padded bar, and used its momentum to jam the next arm. The room changed around me. Distances became decisions. Hinges, bolts, and angles announced themselves without words. I did not see red lines yet, but I felt where they might appear. Richard increased the speed. Maya struck the glass with her palm. I heard nothing, but I read the shape of my name on her mouth. The fourth arm deployed with a metal training blade instead of padding. Richard had lied. I twisted away. The dull edge cut through my shirt and opened the skin below my ribs. Pain sharpened everything. I seized the arm, planted one foot against its base, and pulled until the mounting bolts tore out of the floor. The machine stopped. Blood ran warm under my shirt. Behind the glass, Richard stared at the broken mount with the same fascinated expression he would wear in the ballroom months later. Maya reached me first when the door opened. She pressed folded gauze against my side, then looked over her shoulder at Richard. "You activated an unapproved attachment," she said. Her voice shook with controlled anger. "The safety lock was disabled from your console." "The blade was blunt," Richard replied. "It cut him, superficially." I caught Maya's wrist, not to stop her but to make her look at me. "I am all right." She looked down at my hand. I released her immediately. "Do not tell me you are all right to make this easier for him," she said. The truth of it silenced me. Ethan entered the room last. His gaze moved from the torn machine to Maya's hand against my side. "You made your point," he told Richard. "Lucas is unusual. Now can we stop pretending he belongs in a laboratory?" For one hopeful second, I thought he was defending me. Then he took the gauze from Maya's hand and offered it to me, forcing her to step back. "I will take care of my brother," he said. Maya did not move. "He can decide who touches him." Ethan's smile held. "Of course. Lucas?" The room waited for me to choose between them. I hated the performance, so I pressed the gauze to my own side. "I can take care of the cut," I said. "What I need is the activation log from that console." Richard's expression closed. Maya looked at me with something like approval. Ethan looked at her, looking at me, and the approval disappeared from his face. The activation log was gone by the time we returned to Vale Tower. Richard said a system fault had corrupted it. Maya said system faults did not selectively erase one console's commands. Ethan advised me not to accuse our father without proof. Helena cried when she saw the bandage and asked why I kept putting myself in situations where people could call me reckless. I told her Richard had lied about the blade. She looked at him. He said the test had malfunctioned. She chose the explanation that allowed our family dinner to continue. That night, I packed a bag. Helena found me in the guest room. She stood in the doorway with both hands gripping the frame. "Please do not leave angry," she said. "Would leaving calmly make it better? Your father does not understand limits when he believes something matters. That does not mean he wanted you hurt. He wanted to see what I would do when I was hurt." She stepped inside. "We just found you. Give us time to learn you. I have been giving everyone time. Then give me a little more." Her voice broke on the last word. I looked at the old baby clothes she had placed on a chair, a silent promise that she had once loved me. I unpacked the bag. That choice bought Helena comfort and gave Richard continued access to me. It also taught Ethan that I could be held in place by my mother's tears. Over the next 2 months, pressure became routine. Richard assigned me to emergency planning projects that required access to sensitive systems, then delayed the credentials I needed to complete them. When deadlines slipped, Ethan appeared in meetings with the missing information and solved the problem. Helena asked me to be grateful that my brother was helping. Eleanor watched without intervening, as if she were measuring how long I would tolerate the arrangement. Maya stopped using company messages when she needed to speak with me. We met in public places, usually a coffee shop across from the river where the tables were too close for private microphones and too crowded for anyone to follow us without being noticed. She found 3 more records shaped to make me look unstable. A complaint said I had threatened an engineer after he refused me access. The engineer's own follow-up note said I had asked for a written explanation and left. A medical entry described my cut at the test facility as an injury caused by unauthorized activity, though I had entered under Richard's order. A security summary claimed I had attempted to enter Ethan's office after hours. Door records showed my badge had been used while I was at dinner with Helena. "Someone cloned your credential," Maya said. "Or someone with administrative rights generated an event under your identity." "Can Ethan do that?" "His office can request changes. The system administrator approves them. Richard's credentials can bypass approval, so we still have 2 possible sources." "At least 2. I stirred coffee I had forgotten to drink. "Why are you helping me?" Maya looked through the window at the river. Ice had started forming along the stone edge. "My father designed the original threat analysis platform for Vale Aegis. Richard acquired his company when I was 16. The contract promised my father a research seat and medical coverage while he was ill. 6 months later, the board removed him and classified his work. He died before the lawsuit reached discovery." She said it plainly, but her thumb kept rubbing the paper sleeve around her cup. "You came to work for the company after that?" "I came to find out what they buried." "Does Eleanor know?" "She hired me." The answer connected several warnings I had ignored. "My grandmother put you near me. She assigned me to assess you. I chose what happened after that." "Did you know who I was before I arrived?" "I knew Eleanor had found a biological heir. I did not know anything else." I leaned back, needing distance. Maya let me take it. You should have told me, I said. Yes. The immediate agreement took some heat out of me. She continued, at first, telling you would have compromised my investigation. Later, I did not tell you because I knew you might stop trusting me. That was selfish. Which part of this is real, Maya? Her eyes returned to mine. The evidence is real. My anger at Richard is real. The fact that I look for you when I enter a room is inconveniently real. None of that gives me the right to choose your reaction. The noise of the coffee shop seemed to move farther away. I wanted to reach across the table. I did not. I need time, I said. Take it. And no more omissions because you think I will leave. Agreed. That boundary cost me something. I missed her before we had even stood up, but leaving the table was the first decision I made without protecting someone else from how it felt. 3 days later, Eleanor summoned me to the Old Vale estate on Lake Michigan. The house had been closed for winter. Dust covered the entry tables, and white sheets draped the furniture. Eleanor led me to a study where no staff had prepared a fire. She unlocked a cabinet built into the wall and removed a metal case. Inside lay a leather journal, 2 microfilm reels, and a black disc the size of a coin. My father called it the Vale condition, she said. Richard called it an asset. The researchers called it anticipatory kinetic cognition. Maya's test? A shadow of it. Certain members of our bloodline perceive physical intent before ordinary conscious processing. Not thoughts, not the future. Motion already beginning in muscle, pressure, balance, and breath. Under sufficient danger, perception becomes control. I thought of the mechanical arms, the torn bolts, and Richard's face behind the glass. How do you know? Eleanor opened the journal. The pages contained dates, diagrams of bodies in motion, and descriptions written by her grandfather during the Second World War. He had survived an ambush, and later claimed that every bullet had drawn its path before it was fired. The ability faded when the danger passed. It returned years later when he stopped an armed robbery without killing either attacker. Family stories are not evidence, I said. No, this is... She held up the black disc. Tiny contacts ringed its edge. Your father funded a neural interface using Maya's father's prediction architecture. The interface was meant to reproduce the condition in a person without the bloodline. It never worked fully. But the work revealed that someone with the inherited pattern might awaken a far stronger state. Richard named the project Absolute Violence. The name disgusted me. Of course he did. Your mother was pregnant when he received the first viable prenatal markers. I stared at her. He knew I had it before I was born. He knew you might, and you knew he was studying me. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her cane. I knew after you disappeared. That is not the same answer. For the first time, her composure cracked. I knew he had tested the blood sample. I did not know what he intended. I confronted him after the clinic reported your death. He showed me ashes, records, and a physician's statement. I wanted to believe my son had not stolen his own child. The cold study seemed to tilt. Stolen, I repeated. I cannot prove it yet, but you brought me into his house while you suspected it. I brought you where I could protect you. You brought the experiment back to the scientist. Eleanor flinched. The small movement told me I had hit the truth. I closed the metal case. Why Ethan? Richard adopted him from a family with no connection to us. I believe he needed a visible heir to end questions about the missing baby and to carry the company if you never returned. A replacement. A shield. Perhaps. He was an infant. He was. I heard the careful tense. When did he stop being innocent? Eleanor looked toward the covered windows. That is what I need you and Maya to establish. Anger rose so fast that I stood. You do not get to assign me another test. Lucas, if Richard has continued the project, the company may be building technology around your nervous system. Then report him. With a journal and a failed prototype, he controls the research records, and Ethan controls the board's succession committee. If I accuse them without proof, they will remove me for incapacity and bury the rest. That sounds like your problem. It became yours before you were born. I stepped close enough that she had to raise her face. I did not threaten her. I needed her to hear me without the protection of distance. No, I said. Richard made it mine. You kept it alive. Do not confuse damage you helped create with duty I owe you. I left the case on her desk and walked out. Maya was waiting by my car. Snow had begun to fall, catching in her hair and on the shoulders of her coat. I stopped several feet away. Did Eleanor call you? She told me you might need the complete file. I told her she did not get to decide whether you needed me. Then why are you here? Because I decided to be. If you want me to leave, I will. The answer mattered. So did the fact that she stayed still while I chose. She told me about your father's system, I said. Maya nodded. I have copies of his early design notes. He built software to predict escalation from visible motion and environmental data. Richard turned the same logic toward controlling force. Absolute violence. My father hated that name. He wrote that a system optimized only for victory would eventually define every human problem as an enemy. Snow melted against my face. Richard thinks it is inside me. Do you? I remembered how the training room changed before I tore out the mechanical arm. Something is. Not what he wants. Not yet. Maya stepped closer, slowly enough that I could move away. Then we make sure you decide what it becomes. We? If you still want my help. I looked at her hand beside her coat. I had spent 3 days wanting to touch it, and 3 minutes learning that my entire return to the Vale family might have been designed around a weapon hidden in my body. I want honesty, I said. You have it. I want the option to walk away, even if it ruins Eleanor's plan. You have that too. And if I tell you a place is dangerous, I do not get to order you out of it. One eyebrow rose. That sounded like a rule for you, not me. It is. I am trying to say it before fear makes me stupid. Her expression softened. Then I promise to tell you when fear makes you stupid. I held out my hand. Maya looked at it, then slid her fingers through mine instead of giving me a businesslike shake. The contact was warm and chosen. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. This does not erase the time I needed, I said. I know. It complicates it. I know that too. Her thumb moved once against the side of my hand. The small pressure reached deeper than any dramatic promise could have. We began investigating together, but not secretly enough. Maya used her authorized access to map, which archives had been moved after my identity was confirmed. I searched my foster and medical records for gaps that matched Vale payments. We did not break into systems. We preserved what we could lawfully reach, documented missing items, and wrote down who had access when they disappeared. The pattern emerged in layers. A shell foundation funded the clinic where I was born. Vale Aegis acquired the foundation's records division 2 years later. A private transport company billed that foundation on the night of my birth, though the clinic log showed no transfer. My first foster file began 4 days later, under the name Baby Reed, with no hospital discharge summary attached. None of those facts alone proved Richard stole me. Together, they narrowed the innocent explanations until almost none remained. Then Maya found a design memo written 6 months before my birth. The memo did not name me. It described a hereditary candidate whose awakening might require separation from familiar attachment, repeated exposure to unpredictable environments, and a final betrayal by the candidate's primary bond. Someone had annotated the final paragraph with Richard's executive code. I read that sentence 3 times in Maya's apartment. Her apartment was small, warm, and crowded with books. A dead plant sat on the windowsill because she kept forgetting to replace it. Until that night, it was the only place in Chicago that did not seem arranged to observe me. He put me into foster care to create pressure, I said. The memo proposes it. It does not prove he carried it out. Do not protect me from the conclusion. I am protecting the conclusion from running ahead of the evidence. I stood so quickly that my knee struck the coffee table. A mug tipped. I caught it before it fell, then threw it into the sink anyway. It shattered against the steel. Maya did not tell me to calm down. She remained on the couch, her body angled toward the door rather than trapped between me and the kitchen. I saw the choice and hated that I had made it necessary. I am sorry, I said. For breaking your mug, or for making sure I had an exit? Both. It was my mug. Then both more. I picked up the larger pieces with a towel. My hands shook. Maya came closer but stopped before touching me. Do you want contact? She asked. The question almost broke me. Yes. She wrapped both arms around me from the side, leaving me room to turn. I lowered my forehead to her hair. Her palm rested flat between my shoulder blades. Nothing about the touch restrained me. That was why I could let myself stay. If he designed my life to make me violent, I said, then every time I lose control, I give him what he wanted. No. A moment is not a destiny. You broke a mug. You recognized my position. You stopped. You repaired what you could. Richard's theory has no room for that sequence, because it is built to ignore choice. I lifted my head. You sound like your father. That is the nicest thing anyone has said to me this year. I touched her cheek with the back of 2 fingers, slow enough to ask without words. She turned into the contact. When I leaned closer, she closed the remaining distance. The first kiss was brief. The second was not. Her hand moved from my back to my collar, and mine settled at her waist. Heat and fear arrived together. I wanted to pull her closer. I also knew how easily wanting protection could become wanting control. I broke the kiss first. Maya searched my face. What happened? I need to know this is not gratitude, danger, or Eleanor's assignment. It is definitely not gratitude. You are difficult and you broke my mug. I laughed against her forehead. Her fingers tightened lightly at my collar. I cannot promise danger has nothing to do with how intense this feels. I can promise I wanted you before I knew how bad it would become. And I can choose again when it is over. That is enough. Good. Because stopping was responsible. But if you do it every time without asking me, it may become annoying. Noted. She kissed me once more, deliberately, then stepped away on her own. Chosen intimacy. Chosen distance. Both mattered. Ethan learned about us the next morning. He was waiting in my office when I arrived. He sat in my chair with one ankle across his knee, and the missing parking garage report on my desk. You and Maya spent 6 hours together last night, he said. I closed the door behind me. You are monitoring her apartment? The company monitors threats to key staff. She is a risk analyst, not a protected executive. She became a threat when she started feeding you internal records. I did not ask how he knew. Asking would confirm details. Get out of my chair, I said. Ethan smiled. There he is. The real Lucas. You have never cared who I really am. He stood and came around the desk. I cared when you said you did not want the company. I cared when Mom stopped sleeping because she was afraid you would leave. I even cared when Dad cut you in that ridiculous test. But Maya is different. Because you want her. Because she belongs in my future. She belongs to herself. His smile thinned. You have been here 4 months. You do not understand how our world works. Marriages settle control. Public relationships settle confidence. Maya's father's patents are tied up in Vale Aegis. If she joins me, the dispute ends and the platform stays whole. Has she agreed to any of that? She will. That sounds like no. He stepped closer until only the desk corner separated us. You take everything and call it truth. My parents. My name. My future position. Now the woman who was supposed to stand beside me. Were you promised her? Not in words. Then you were promised nothing. His hand curled into a fist. For an instant, I felt the old change in space. His weight shifted. His right shoulder lowered. I knew exactly how he would swing, and where I could put him on the floor. I did not move. Ethan saw something in my face and let his hand open. Maya is using you, he said. She wants Dad's records and thinks your blood will open the sealed archive. When she has what she needs, she will leave. Maybe. That would still be her decision. The answer unsettled him more than jealousy would have. He picked up the report from my desk. The succession committee meets in 3 months. Dad will name one heir. If you withdraw your claim now, I can make the records against you disappear. I never filed a claim. Your existence is one. Then you are negotiating with the wrong person. Ethan paused at the door. Mom will choose me. Lucas. Whatever she says to you in private, she will choose the son she raised. After he left, I stood alone with that sentence. It worked because I believed him. That evening, I confronted Richard in his private office. I brought copies of the altered reports and the design memo. I did not bring our full evidence archive. Maya kept that offline. Richard read each page without changing expression. Where did you obtain the research memo? He asked. Is it authentic? That is not an answer. It is the only one you are getting. Did you arrange my disappearance? He set the memo down. If I say no, you will assume I am lying. If I say that the truth is complicated, you will hear guilt. Try the truth anyway. Richard rose and walked to the window. Snow moved between the buildings below us. When Helena became pregnant, Vale Aegis was close to collapse. My father had left behind stories about a hereditary combat state. Maya's father believed the underlying perception could be modeled. We had military contracts, but no working system. Then your prenatal tests showed the same neural markers described in the family records. So you tested your unborn child. I confirmed a possibility. Did you steal me? He faced me. I arranged for you to survive outside the attention surrounding this family. The language was so clean that it took a second to hear the confession. You told my mother I was dead. Helena could not have maintained the deception. You put me in foster care. The placement was supposed to be stable. The intermediary failed. I crossed the room before I knew I had moved. My fist stopped beside his face and struck the window instead. The reinforced glass boomed but did not break. Pain shot through my knuckles. Richard did not flinch. There, he said softly. That is the threshold. I pulled my hand back. You think this proves you were right? I think you have spent your life surviving pressures that would destroy ordinary people. I think the condition is close to waking. When it does, you could control any physical conflict before it begins. No soldier, security system, or weapon within reach could stop you. And that belongs to Vale Aegis? It belongs to the future. I can help you master it. You do not know what mastery means. I know power without control becomes tragedy. You mean control without your hand on it becomes inconvenient. The office door opened behind me. Helena stood there. She had heard enough to see my bleeding hand and Richard facing me. Not enough to hear the confession before it. Lucas, she said. Step away from your father. I turned. Ask him what he did. I heard shouting. Ask him why I disappeared. Richard remained silent. Helena looked between us. Fear entered her face, and it was aimed at me. Please, she said. We can discuss this when everyone is calm. He just admitted he arranged it. Richard? My father finally spoke. I told Lucas that decisions were made to protect him. He is interpreting them through anger. That is a lie. Helena came toward me carefully, as if approaching an injured animal. Your hand needs attention. I looked down. Blood had reached my wrist. The sight gave her something easier to care about than the truth. Say you believe me, I told her. Her lips parted. No answer came. I had edited my pain for her, stayed for her, and accepted every delay because she said she needed time. Now the cost arrived. She had learned that she never had to choose the harder truth while I remained close enough to forgive her. Lucas, she whispered. That is what I thought. I walked past her. For the first time, her tears did not stop me. Maya cleaned my hand at her apartment. She did not ask me to repeat Richard's confession until the bandage was secure. Then, she placed her phone on the table, opened an offline recorder, and asked whether I wanted to document the words while they were fresh. I did. Afterward, I sat on the floor with my back against her couch. She sat beside me, our shoulders touching. I nearly hit him, I said. But you did not. I hit the window. And now your hand hurts. Consequence. You make it sound simple. It is not simple. It is specific. Specific things can be changed. I turned my bandaged hand over. He wants a final betrayal. The memo said awakening required betrayal by the primary bond. He may believe that. Belief is not proof the theory works. Ethan said Helena will choose him. Maya's shoulder pressed more firmly into mine. What will you choose if she does? I had no answer. That was the question Richard's entire plan had avoided. He had designed pressure, isolation, and betrayal as if I were a machine that would produce power when enough buttons were pressed. He had never considered that I might decide what happened after the power arrived. 2 days later, Vale Aegis announced the succession gala. The public invitation called it a celebration of continuity. The private board notice contained 2 resolutions. The first named Ethan, sole heir and future chairman. The second classified me as a reputational and physical risk whose family status would not carry governance rights. Helena's signature appeared beneath both. The cold opening was 3 weeks away. My first impulse was to publish everything. Maya stopped me by asking one question. What can we prove, without giving Richard time to destroy the source? The confession existed only in my memory, and the account I recorded afterward. The research memo proved someone proposed abusive conditions, not that Richard carried them out. The foundation payments and transport invoice created a pattern, but the clinic's original records were missing. The altered security reports showed a campaign against me, though we still could not tie every change to one person. We had enough to raise questions and not enough to survive the answer Richard would manufacture. Then we need the sealed archive, I said. Maya nodded. My father's notes refer to a local repository disconnected from the corporate network. He designed it that way because predictive models built from biometric data were too sensitive for remote access. If Richard kept the original research, it should be there. Where? Under the old test facility. I remembered the black device in Eleanor's case. The prototype disk. It may be an authentication key. Your blood pattern may be the second factor, which means Eleanor knew. Probably. I called my grandmother and put the phone on speaker. Eleanor answered after one ring. Have you decided to stop punishing the truth because I delivered it badly? Have you decided to stop calling manipulation protection? Silence stretched between us. Maya stood across the table, listening. We need the black disk, I said, and access to the old facility. Then you have found Samuel Cross's archive. Maya's face changed at her father's name, but she said nothing. You knew where it was, I said. I knew where he intended to build it. Richard locked me out after Samuel died. Why keep the key? Because I stole it before he could destroy it. Bring it to us. No. If Richard sees me move, he will know what you are doing. I will leave the case in the estate study. The staff has been dismissed for winter. You expect us to trust you alone with a chain of custody? Eleanor breathed out. Photograph the case where you find it. Record the opening. Document every transfer. Maya knows how. Maya stepped closer to the phone. If the archive contains evidence about my father, I control how his personal material is used. Agreed, Eleanor said. And Lucas decides whether any biometric research about him survives. My grandmother hesitated. That was not a difficult condition, Maya said. Agreed, Eleanor repeated. We collected the disc the next night. Maya recorded the sealed case, the time, and both of us opening it. Eleanor had added an old facility credential and a handwritten warning. Richard receives an alert if the archive door opens. Once inside, assume you have 20 minutes. That sounds dramatic, I said. Your family builds weapons under hotels? Maya replied. Drama is part of the operating budget. The old test facility looked deserted, but electricity still fed the security fence. Maya used Eleanor's credential at the main entrance. It failed. Richard revoked her, she said. Can you get us in legally? I am still assigned to systems testing here. My access covers the research floor, not the sublevel. If I use it after midnight, security will review it. They will review us anyway. She looked at me. Once we enter, we do not pretend this is safe. If I say stop because the evidence is contaminated or the system is unstable, you stop. And if I say we leave because people are coming, I evaluate the information, then I choose. It was not the promise my fear wanted. It was the promise her agency required. Deal, I said. Her credential opened the main door. We moved through the dark research floor using only low lights along the walls. I remembered the route to the circular test room. Behind it, Maya found a service corridor not shown on the current floor plan. The black disk fit a recessed slot at the end. A panel lit and displayed a request for a living signature. I placed my palm on the glass. A needle pricked one finger. The panel processed the sample, then showed 2 lines. Hereditary candidate confirmed. L. Vale. Status, terminated. Maya photographed the display. Terminated in a data system can mean closed. You do not believe that? No. The hidden door opened. Cold air came from a narrow server room. Most of the racks were empty. One enclosed cabinet remained active, its indicator lights moving in a slow green pattern. A console requested the disk again. Maya inserted it and entered a passphrase from her father's notes. A directory appeared with 6 project folders. One was labeled AV Hereditary. Another carried her father's initials. We started with the evidence about my birth. The archive contained scanned authorizations bearing Richard's signature. One approved the secret transfer of candidate L from the clinic to a contracted caregiver. Another ordered the production of a false neonatal death summary for Helena Vale. Quarterly monitoring reports followed me through foster placements. They described injuries, school fights, stress responses, and medical visits. Richard had not lost track of me. He had watched. At age 7, I moved from a stable home after the foster mother attempted to adopt me. The archive called the move Attachment Disruption Cycle 1. At 13, a placement with repeated domestic calls was allowed to continue for 6 months after a caseworker raised concerns. The archive called it controlled volatility exposure. At 17, a scholarship from an anonymous foundation was withdrawn after I chose emergency medicine instead of military training. The note called it candidate resistance to directed pathway. I gripped the console until my bandaged hand throbbed. Maya stood close but did not touch me. Tell me what you need. Copies. All of it. That is biometric and child welfare data. We can preserve it, but public release would expose your entire life. I know. Decide later. Right now, we copy and verify. Her steadiness gave me the next action. We connected 2 encrypted drives and began the transfer. While the files copied, Maya opened her father's folder. It contained audio notes, technical diagrams, and correspondence with Richard. She listened through headphones, marking dates. Tears filled her eyes without falling. What is it? I asked. She removed one side of the headphones so I could hear. Her father's tired voice came through the small speaker. The model is descriptive, Richard, not prescriptive. It can recognize imminent movement. It cannot justify creating harm to improve recognition. If you proceed with conditioning the child, I will report the project and surrender the patents. Richard's written reply appeared beside the recording. Your medical financing and ownership position depend on confidentiality. Maya stopped the audio. He blackmailed him with treatment, she said. You do not have to keep going. Yes, I do. No, you want to. That is different. She closed her eyes, then nodded. I want to finish the copy. I do not want to hear the rest tonight. Then we do not. An alarm sounded in the corridor. The file transfer showed 61%. Maya checked the security display. 3 people entered through the loading bay. They used executive override. Richard? The system does not identify them. I looked at the server cabinet. How long? 7 minutes. Maybe 8. Can we detach the storage unit? Not without corrupting it. Footsteps reached the service corridor. My body changed before I could decide to be afraid. I heard the exact difference between 3 sets of steps. One heavy, one dragging slightly, one almost silent. Muscles tightened across my back. The room filled with invisible paths, not yet red, but bright enough to feel. They are carrying weapons, I said. Maya studied the empty camera view. How do you know? One has weight against his right thigh. Another keeps touching his chest. Concealed baton or gun. That is not enough to fight them. I know. We locked the archive door and moved a metal cabinet in front of it. Maya kept the transfer running while I stood to one side, away from the direct line of entry. The first strike hit the door. A voice ordered us to step away from the equipment. The speaker did not give a name or identify law enforcement authority. Veil internal response, Maya whispered. They are supposed to announce themselves. Then they do not want a record of who they are. The transfer reached 74%. A tool whined against the lock. The panel flashed as the mechanism failed. Maya removed the black disk. Once they break the door, the copy stops. Then take the completed drive. The index writes at the end. Without it, the files may be unreadable. Can you force it now? She entered a command. The display asked whether to close the archive at current progress. She confirmed. The copy stopped at 78% and began writing its index. The door bent inward. Lucas, Maya said. If they come through, our goal is to leave, not punish them. Agreed. The index finished. I pulled the drive free and placed it in her inner coat pocket. My fingers brushed the fabric above her ribs. Under any other circumstances, the closeness would have changed the air between us. Now she caught my wrist and held it there for one heartbeat. Come out with me, she said. That is the plan. The door burst open. The first intruder wore black protective gear with no visible company mark. He carried a shock baton. The second raised a launcher, designed for chemical restraint. The third stayed behind them with a compact control unit. Red lines appeared. Not the full system from the ballroom. These were faint, unstable, and broken by flashes of pain behind my eyes. The launcher aimed toward Maya. I moved before the trigger depressed. I knocked the barrel upward. A restraint capsule struck the ceiling and filled the doorway with bitter mist. I turned the weapon into the first man's baton arm, forcing both tools down. He drove a shoulder at me. A red line marked his balance. I hooked his ankle and sent him into the padded edge of the server rack. The baton fell. I kicked it away. The second man reached for Maya. She slammed the console's metal keyboard tray into his hand and moved toward the corridor. She had trained for this. She did not wait to be rescued. The third man activated the control unit. Every mechanical arm in the old test room came alive beyond the corridor. They are sealing the exit, Maya said. The first man recovered and swung at my head. I blocked with both forearms. Pain traveled to my injured hand. The red line darkened at his elbow. I could have broken it. Instead, I drove him backward into the second man and created space. Move, I told Maya. We ran through the service door as the archive sealed behind us. The test room ahead had become a cage of moving steel. Padded bars and metal blades swept across every route to the main door. The third intruder followed with the control unit. Stop now, Mr. Vale. The system is authorized to escalate. Authorized by whom? He did not answer. Maya pointed to a maintenance recess across the room. There is a manual shutoff behind that panel. Can you reach it? If the left arm stopped for 4 seconds. The pattern formed in my perception. Each arm had a path. Each path had a hinge. Each hinge connected to a sequence. I could not stop all of them. I did not need to. When I say now, go behind me, I told her. Behind, not carried. Behind. I entered the moving circle. A bar came at my knees. I stepped on it and let it lift me over a blade. I caught the upper arm's padded shaft, turned with its force, and drove it into the path of another. Metal struck metal. 2 mechanisms jammed. I landed hard, rolled, and tore an emergency cable from the floor channel. The left side paused. Now. Maya ran. A blade reversed unexpectedly toward her back. I crossed the distance and caught the mechanical housing, not the blade. The motor screamed. Heat burned my palms. For a second, my strength was not enough. Then every point of strain became clear. I shifted my grip half an inch and twisted. The housing split at its weakest seam. The blade dropped before touching her coat. Maya reached the panel and hit the shutoff. The room froze. So did the intruders. I could have gone after them. Anger asked me to. The red lines offered 6 ways to put each man down. Maya opened the main exit. Lucas! I chose her voice. We left. Outside, we called emergency services and reported the assault. We waited on the public road beyond company property. By the time local officers entered the facility, the 3 intruders were gone. The archive cabinet had been wiped, but Maya's partial drive remained intact. Vale Aegis issued a statement claiming 2 employees had entered an inactive restricted area and triggered an automated security response. Richard called me personally. Return the stolen data, he said, and I will keep Maya out of the criminal complaint. You sent armed men. I sent a response team to protect classified research. If you force this into public review, your conduct will be examined too. Good. He went quiet. You entered without authorization, he said. Maya had authorized access to the research floor. The hidden archive accepted the key and my living signature. We preserved evidence of crimes committed against me. Let an independent investigator decide the rest. You sound confident. I sound finished asking your permission. Then perhaps you are ready for the gala. The call ended. Maya and I spent the next week working with an attorney whose name I chose not to repeat outside protected communications. We did not give the archive to Eleanor, the company, or the press. We produced verified copies under a preservation agreement and submitted a narrow complaint to the appropriate authorities concerning my falsified records and unlawful biometric monitoring. The attorney warned us that formal action would be slow and that Richard could still control the company's public story. Slow truth was still truth. The partial archive also contained a recent folder about Ethan. At first, I assumed Richard had monitored him as another child. The dates began only 6 months earlier, 2 months before my return. The files described neural interface sessions, drug regimens, and attempts to reproduce the hereditary pattern using the black disk's architecture. Ethan was the stolen vessel, the system would later identify. He had volunteered to become the artificial candidate. Maya opened a session video. Ethan sat in the same circular test room, electrodes at his temples. Richard asked why he wanted to continue after 3 failed trials. Because if Lucas returns, blood beats adoption, Ethan said. You taught me that markets trust simple succession. I will not let a dead child take my life. Lucas is alive, Richard replied. Ethan's face emptied. Then make me stronger before he gets here. The recording date was 12 days before Eleanor contacted me. He had known. He had welcomed me as a brother, after choosing to become a weapon against me. The first major question locked in the ballroom finally had an answer. The power recognized Ethan because Richard had placed a copy of its architecture inside him. It called him stolen because the design came from Maya's father and the activation conditions came from my stolen life. But the answer created a worse problem. The latest medical note warned that Ethan's interface caused paranoia, fixation, and impaired impulse control under threat. Richard had continued the sessions anyway. The black device under the ballroom stage was a remote amplifier designed to push the interface into its final state. The gala is another test, Maya said. He is putting both candidates in one room, creating public betrayal, then amplifying Ethan while waiting for you to awaken naturally. Helena's choice is the trigger. He believes it is. And you are part of Ethan's pressure. Maya closed the file. He sees me as a contested asset because of the patents. Ethan sees me as proof he still owns his future. You are not going to the gala. The words came out before judgment. Maya's face became still. Try that again. Fear pushed harder. Richard designed the room around you. Ethan's interface is unstable. If he loses control, then I need to decide what risk I accept. I watched a blade almost hit you because of me. Because of Richard. Do not move his responsibility onto your existence. I cannot protect you from that amplifier if I do not know what it does. Protection is not the only value. I am a witness, a technical expert on my father's system, and a person Richard harmed. I have reasons to be there that do not orbit you. I heard the truth and still wanted to lock every door between her and the ballroom. If you go, I said, I will spend the whole night watching you instead of the evidence. That is your attention to manage. Maya. No, she stood. You told Ethan I belong to myself. Do not say it beautifully in his office and forget it when you are afraid. The boundary landed harder than a slap. I looked away. You are right. I know. That does not fix it. What does? A plan where my choices are real, not choices you approve because they match yours. We built one. Maya would attend as a Veil Aegis analyst, wearing an independent recording device permitted under the advice we had received. She would remain near public exits and would not enter any isolated company-controlled area. I would not use her as bait, order her away, or conceal a threat to influence her choice. She would tell me if she changed the plan. I would do the same. We also gave sealed evidence to 2 independent custodians before the gala, set to release if either of us failed to cancel a timed instruction. It was not a magic solution. The release would trigger review, not guarantee justice. It did remove Richard's ability to erase everything by taking one drive. On the night of the gala, Maya tied my black bow tie in her apartment because my injured hand still pulled against the bandage. "This is domestic," she said, smoothing the collar. "I distrust it. You can stop." I did not say I disliked it. Her fingers rested at my throat. I placed my hands at her waist but did not draw her closer. "Are you asking?" she murmured. "Yes." She stepped into me until the silver clasp of her dress touched my jacket. Then yes. I kissed her slowly. The gala, the archive, and my family disappeared for several seconds. When we separated, she kept one hand against my chest. "Whatever happens tonight," she said, "do not let Richard define strength as the thing he can measure. And you do not let him define you as a patent dispute. Deal." We arrived separately. The ballroom looked exactly like the kind of place built to hide violence under beauty. White orchids covered the stage. Crystal lights reflected from polished floors. Company leaders, investors, and reporters gathered beneath the new Veil Aegis logo. Security staff stood at every exit. Helena found me before the program began. She wore silver, the color she had chosen for every major family announcement since Ethan's adoption. Her gaze fell to my bandaged hand. "You came," she said. "You signed a resolution declaring me dangerous. I wanted to hear you explain it." Pain crossed her face. "Richard said it was temporary legal protection. If the board feared a succession fight, they could freeze both of you out. Ethan has trained for this his entire life. Naming him does not mean you are less my son. You signed away my rights and called it reassurance. I was trying to keep the family together." "No. You were trying to avoid the moment when keeping one son comfortable required hurting the other." She reached for me. I stepped back. Her hand fell. "What do you want me to do?" 8 months earlier, I would have given her an answer easy enough to perform. I would have asked her to say she loved me. I would have accepted a private apology while she supported Ethan in public. "Read the evidence we sent to your independent counsel," I said. "Then make your own choice where everyone can see it. I will not design a safe version for you." The program began before she answered. Richard welcomed the room and spoke about stability. Ethan stood beside him in a white dinner jacket, smiling beneath the cameras. I remained near the center aisle. Maya stood near the stage controls with a tablet in her hand. When Richard announced Ethan as sole heir, applause filled the ballroom. Helena applauded too. The last hope I had protected went silent. I waited until the applause ended, then walked to the front with the signed transfer document our attorney had obtained through the board notice. "Mother," I said, keeping my voice low enough that only the nearest microphones caught it, "is this your signature?" She looked at the page, then at the cameras. "You were gone for 20 years, Lucas," she said. "Ethan was our son every day you were not here. Please do not make this uglier." The betrayal was not that she loved him, it was that she used the years stolen from me as the reason to choose the person who benefited from the theft. Something opened inside my mind. Richard watched. Ethan smiled and told security to remove me. The first guard reached for my throat. Absolute violence awakened. The ballroom returned to the exact silence where my story had begun. 2 guards were on the floor, alive and stunned. Ethan held Maya by the arm. Richard stood beneath the orchids, one hand close to the concealed amplifier control. The silent interface spread across my perception. Absolute violence was not a voice commanding me to attack. It was a field of consequences. Every deliberate threat created a path. Every path carried a measure. The smallest force required to end it. Beyond that measure, the path turned black. Excess returns to the wielder. I understood the warning without testing it. If I chose pain after safety had already been achieved, the additional damage would come through my own body. The power Richard wanted was built around a limit he would despise. Ethan pulled Maya backward. "Do not move, Lucas. You came here for the company. You can leave without the girl." "I am not a thing you can keep," Maya said. "Take your hand off me." He tightened his grip. The interface marked 5 threat paths, including the line from Richard to the black device beneath the stage. Threat network detected, source concealed, stolen vessel active, architect observing. I did not rush Ethan. The shortest red line ended at Richard's hand. I picked up the fallen baton and threw it low across the stage. It struck the concealed control before Richard could press it. Plastic cracked. The device skidded from beneath the orchids and stopped in full view of the front cameras. Maya moved at the same moment. She drove her heel down Ethan's shoe, turned toward his thumb, and pulled her arm through the opening his grip created. I had seen her practice that release in company training. She freed herself. I crossed the remaining distance and placed my body between them. Ethan swung at me. The red path showed the blow before his fist left his side. I caught his wrist and stopped it without twisting. "Release me," he hissed. "Stop attacking. You think this makes you the heir? I think it makes you a man throwing a punch in front of 200 witnesses." He tried to drive his knee into me. I turned my hip and redirected it past my leg. The interface offered a dozen endings: fractured wrist, dislocated shoulder, damaged knee, unconsciousness. Each carried an exact force. Each turned black the moment Ethan lost his ability to continue. I put him face down on the carpet and held one arm behind his back. The necessary measure reached 0. I let go and stepped away. Ethan rolled onto his back, humiliated but uninjured. "Finish it," he said. "That is what you came for." "No, that is what Richard built the room for." I pointed at the broken amplifier. Maya had already reached it. She used a clean cloth from a service table to turn the device so the serial label faced the cameras. "This is an unauthorized neural field amplifier from the discontinued AV program," she said. Her voice carried through a microphone near the stage. It was active beneath the platform during the succession announcement. The device can intensify responses from an implanted interface. Richard moved toward her. A red path connected his hand to the device. I stepped between them, not touching him. "Do not," I said. He stopped. For the first time in my life, my father understood that physical leverage had left him. The interface made that change obvious, but it did not tell the room why it mattered. I did. "Richard placed an experimental interface in Ethan," I said. "He arranged this public conflict to activate it. He also spent 22 years monitoring me after he stole me from the hospital and reported me dead. Verified copies of his records are already outside Vale Aegis." The ballroom erupted into questions. Richard lifted both hands. "My son is experiencing a neurological event. For his safety, everyone needs to remain calm." It was a skilled response. He turned accusation into illness and made control sound like care. Maya picked up her tablet. The amplifier's current session log identifies 2 targets, Candidate L and Interface E. The activation time matches Helena Vale's signature verification and the first security order. This was not an accidental event. Richard looked toward the company's security director, an unnamed man near the exit. "Clear the ballroom. Preserve all devices." No one moved. The 2 guards I had put down were sitting up. One held his wrist. The other drew several full breaths and looked at Richard instead of me. They knew I had stopped before causing serious harm. Helena climbed onto the stage. "Richard," she said, "did you know Lucas was alive?" He did not answer her. "This is not the place. Did you know?" "Helena, step away from the device." She looked at him for several seconds. Then she turned to me. "You told me he admitted it." "I did. And I asked you to calm down." Her voice was nearly lost beneath the crowd. A microphone on the lectern caught it. Richard reached for her. She moved beyond his hand. "Do not touch me," she said. It was a boundary she should have drawn years earlier. It did not repair what she had done to me, but it changed what she would allow next. Ethan stood behind us. Blood ran from one nostril. His pupils were uneven, and his right hand shook. The interface in my vision labeled his movement unstable, but not yet hostile. "You are all choosing him," he said. Helena turned. "Ethan, you need medical help. I needed you 5 minutes ago." "I did choose you." "Not enough." He lunged for the amplifier. Maya kicked it away. Ethan changed direction and caught her around the waist. He dragged her against his chest, one forearm across her collarbones. The threat paths multiplied. His implant made his movements fast, but not controlled. He was reading some of the same physical signals I was, then forcing his body to act before balance and judgment caught up. "Maya," I said, "can you breathe?" "Yes." "His right hand is losing grip." Her answer gave me information, and reminded Ethan that she was participating, not waiting. "You were supposed to be mine," he told her. "No," Maya said. "You built a future in your head and assigned me a role. I never accepted it." His arm tightened. The necessary measure rose. I stepped forward. Ethan shifted her body into my path. The interface showed a narrow route at his left side, but it depended on Maya lowering her weight at the right moment. "Maya, I need your choice," I said. "Can you drop when I touch his wrist?" "Yes." On contact, I moved. Ethan anticipated my first step. He turned, trying to keep Maya between us. I changed direction through the reflection in a silver serving tray, came around his blind side, and touched 2 fingers to the tendons of his wrist. Maya dropped her weight. His damaged grip opened. She slid under his arm and rolled clear. I caught Ethan's shoulder as his balance broke and lowered him to one knee instead of driving him down. He looked up at me with naked hatred. "Why will you not hit me?" "Because you want my violence to excuse yours." He pulled a thin ceramic blade from inside his jacket. The crowd recoiled. Helena said his name. Richard did not look surprised. Ethan slashed toward my ribs. I caught his forearm with both hands. The blade stopped against my jacket. His artificial interface predicted my pressure and changed direction. Mine showed every correction he made and the physical cost of each one. His shoulder was already tearing under the force speed. His shaking hand could no longer hold a stable angle. I had one clean path to disarm him. It required breaking 2 fingers. Measure confirmed. I turned his wrist. The blade fell. 2 small cracks sounded beneath the noise of the room. Pain exploded through the same fingers of my own hand. I released him and looked down. My fingers were not broken, but the system had made me feel the damage I caused. It did not allow violence to become abstract. Ethan collapsed, gripping his hand. Necessary force completed. I kicked the blade away and stepped back. Richard moved toward the side exit. Maya saw him. "The architect is leaving." Several cameras turned. Richard stopped because escape had become more damaging than control. "No one here understands what Lucas is," he said. You are watching a capability that could end armed conflict, protect cities, and make every close-range weapon obsolete. I made choices because no institution would have had the courage to continue. You abused a child for data, Maya said. I preserved a bloodline asset. You mean me, I said. Use the word. He looked directly at me. I preserved you. You preserved access to what you hoped I would become. And now you are standing there because I was right. The interface filled the space between us with no red path at all. Richard was not physically attacking me. Absolute violence could not expose a lie, reverse a board vote, or make my mother brave. It gave me complete authority over a narrow domain, and no shortcut through the human one. That limit saved me from becoming him. No, I said. I am standing here because every time you created harm, someone else gave me a choice you did not predict. A foster mother taught me to cook. An ambulance partner taught me to stop when a scene was safe. Maya taught me that limits make powers safer. You measured the pressure and ignored every relationship that helped me survive it. Richard glanced toward the security team. Detain him. The security director removed his earpiece. I will wait for independent authority, he said. It was the first practical consequence. The next came when 3 board members left the reserve table and told the reporters that the succession resolutions would be suspended pending emergency review. Another board member asked that the ballroom footage and amplifier be preserved by outside counsel. Helena removed the company pin from her dress and placed it on the lectern. Ethan sat on the carpet, breathing too fast. His anger had drained into panic. Do not let them take it out, he told Richard. You said removal could erase me. Richard looked at the cameras instead of his son. Maya knelt several feet from Ethan, beyond his reach. The implant is affecting your nervous system. Medical staff can stabilize you without making decisions about removal tonight. You can consent to immediate care and reserve the larger decision. Ethan stared at her. After what I did? Care is not forgiveness. He looked at Helena next. She took one step toward him, then stopped and asked, May I come closer? Ethan began to cry. He nodded. She went to him. I felt no triumph watching them hold each other. Part of me still wanted Helena to cross the room to me first. Another part understood that Ethan's need did not erase mine and my pain did not require his abandonment. Emergency responders arrived with independent police officers. I kept my hands visible and gave a statement. The 2 guards confirmed that I had used controlled force after they were ordered to remove me. Multiple videos showed Ethan drawing the blade. Maya surrendered a verified copy of her recording and identified the amplifier without touching its internal data. Richard was not led away in handcuffs for dramatic effect. The evidence required review, warrants, and jurisdictional decisions. He left the ballroom with counsel after being instructed not to access company systems or contact certain witnesses. His credentials were suspended before he reached the elevator. That was less satisfying than instant punishment and more real. The interface faded as the immediate threats ended. The red lines disappeared. Pain remained in my hand, my ribs, and every muscle I had forced beyond ordinary speed. Maya found me near the loading entrance after I completed my first statement. She had changed from heels into flat shoes she kept in her work bag. A dark mark showed where Ethan had gripped her arm. I stopped in front of her. May I see it? She held out her arm. I examined the bruise without touching. Do you need medical care? A responder checked it. Soft tissue injury. I need ice and a new employer. I am sorry I told you not to come. You already said I was right. That acknowledged the fact. It did not acknowledge the harm. I used fear to claim authority over your decision. I am sorry. Maya studied me, then lowered her arm. Thank you. Do you want contact? She stepped forward and placed her forehead against my chest. I wrapped my arms around her carefully. Now I do, she said. We stood beneath a harsh service light while people carried equipment and evidence past us. It was not romantic scenery. It was the safest place in the building because nothing there pretended to be beautiful. The weeks after the gala were harder than the headlines suggested. Vale Aegis placed Richard on indefinite leave. The board created an independent committee with authority to preserve the research systems and review the succession process. Government investigators obtained the archive copy through formal process and later recovered additional records from backups Richard had not known survived. Child welfare authorities reopened questions about the payments surrounding my placements. None of it moved quickly. Ethan spent 12 days in a neurological unit. The implant was deactivated, then removed in a staged procedure after he received independent medical advice. Some symptoms improved. Others did not disappear with the hardware. He faced investigation for assaulting Maya, using my credentials, and participating in the alteration of company records. Through counsel, he admitted creating the parking garage clip and 2 of the false reports. He denied knowing the full truth about my childhood, until the archive video proved Richard told him I was alive. The evidence supported part of that claim. Richard had trained him to defend a position without explaining the original crime. Understanding did not cancel consequence. Maya chose not to meet Ethan privately. She gave her statement, requested a protective no-contact condition, and refused 3 messages in which he tried to frame his obsession as love. When his counsel asked whether she would support treatment instead of punishment, she answered that treatment and accountability were not opposites. Helena moved out of the mansion. She sent me 1 message each week. The first contained apologies, explanations, and a request to meet. I answered only the request. Not yet. The second week, she sent a photograph of the baby clothes in a donation box. She wrote that she had used them as proof of her own grief, while ignoring the adult son in front of her. I did not answer. The third week, she wrote, I chose comfort over truth many times. I will not ask you to make my remorse easier. I read that sentence twice. Then I offered a 1-hour meeting in a public garden. Helena arrived early and did not bring gifts. Winter had stripped the garden to bare branches and dark soil. We walked rather than sitting across from each other. I loved Ethan before I knew you were alive, she said. When you returned, I thought loving you meant I had to take something from him. Richard encouraged that fear. But he did not make me sign. He did not make me applaud. No, she swallowed. I used the years you were missing against you. I cannot forgive myself for that. That is not a task I can do for you. I know. We walked past an empty fountain. I am not ready to call the mansion home, I said. I am not ready for weekly dinners or family photographs. If we build anything, it starts with one meeting at a time. No pressure through tears. No asking Ethan to carry messages. No company decisions discussed as proof of love. She nodded after each boundary. One meeting at a time. And if you defend Richard's choices as protection, I leave. I will not. You may fail. If you do, I still leave. Pain moved through her face, but she did not ask me to soften it. I understand. At the end of the hour, she asked whether she could hug me. I said no. She accepted it. That acceptance did more for our future than the hug would have. Eleanor faced a different boundary. The independent committee discovered that she had concealed evidence, retained the authentication disk, and used Maya and me to reach the archive rather than reporting her suspicions earlier. Her actions helped preserve proof, but they also exposed us to danger. She resigned her board voting rights during the review. When she invited me to the Lake Estate, I refused. We spoke by video instead. The board intends to offer you interim control of the family voting trust, she said. With Richard suspended and Ethan medically disqualified from service for now, you are the natural successor. No, Eleanor blinked. You have not heard the terms. That is why it is a real no. I do not need better terms. You would leave the company in the hands of people who protected Richard. Then the trust can appoint an independent fiduciary while the review continues. This is your inheritance. My inheritance was a surveillance file and a nervous system he tried to patent. I will decide what else I accept. Her voice hardened. Power abandoned is power given to someone else. I am not abandoning it. I am refusing your version of it. I proposed conditions before I would consider any future role. Permanent destruction of all unlawfully obtained biometric models after preservation requirements ended. Transfer of Maya's father's patents to a trust controlled by his estate and independent researchers. Compensation for people harmed by the project. Separation of the family trust from company management. And no special title for me, based only on blood. Eleanor listened without interruption. Those conditions could cost the family control, she said. Yes? And if the board refuses? Then I walk away. She studied me through the screen. Your father could never walk away from a system once he believed he could control it. Neither could you. She lowered her eyes. No, it was not reconciliation. It was the first conversation in which she did not turn my survival into an obligation. Absolute violence returned twice during those weeks. The first time, a photographer rushed Maya outside a hearing and shoved a camera within inches of her face after she told him to stop. A red line appeared from his shoulder to the device. The necessary measure was almost nothing. I placed one hand between the lens and Maya, told him the path was blocked, and moved with her toward the building. The line vanished. The second time, I woke from a nightmare and saw threat paths across the dark bedroom. Maya was beside me, already awake, but not touching. You are in my apartment, she said. It is 3:14 in the morning. The door is locked. I am on your left. No one else is here. Her verbal anchors gave the room back to me. The red lines faded. Do you want the light? She asked. Yes. She turned it on. Do you want me close? I looked at the dead plant on her windowsill, the stack of case files on the floor, and the chipped replacement mugs in her kitchen. Specific things. Real things. Yes, I said. She came into my arms. I did not need the power to know exactly how much pressure to use. 3 months after the gala, the board accepted every condition tied to the research program. They did not do it because they became moral overnight. Investigators had frozen key contracts, employees were threatening to leave, and independent directors understood that the company could not survive another concealed program. Cause created consequence. Pressure changed leverage. Maya received control of her father's technical archive through a newly formed public interest trust. She resigned from Vale Aegis and chose to lead a small research team studying de-escalation tools with strict consent rules. She invited me to advise on emergency use cases. This is a job offer, she said across her kitchen table. It is not a relationship test. You can say no and still sleep here. The benefits package sounds unusual. The sleeping benefit has separate performance standards. I nearly choked on my coffee. She smiled into her mug. I accepted a limited advisory role and returned to emergency response training. I did not want to spend my life as a demonstration of Richard's project. I wanted work where ending danger mattered more than owning power. The criminal cases did not conclude in one clean scene. Richard was charged under several theories related to fraud, unlawful monitoring, records falsification, and assaults carried out through company agents. Some counts survived early challenges. Others changed as evidence was tested. Ethan entered treatment and resolved part of his case with an agreement that included continued monitoring, restitution, and a strict no-contact order protecting Maya. The assault with the blade remained subject to separate review. No judge announced that my childhood had been returned. No board vote made Helena my mother again. Accountability changed access, money, authority, and freedom. It could not manufacture intimacy. That part remained my choice. Ethan asked to see me once before his case agreement became final. The request came through our attorneys and his treatment team. Maya's no-contact condition remained absolute, and I made clear that I would not carry a message to her. The meeting would happen in a supervised room at the neurological clinic, with staff close enough to intervene but not close enough to turn our conversation into a performance. I almost refused. Then I realized I was waiting for Helena or Eleanor to tell me what a brother owed. I wanted the answer to be mine, even if the answer was no. After 2 days, I agreed to 40 minutes. Ethan looked smaller without a tailored jacket and an audience. A thin scar disappeared into his hair above one ear where the implant had been removed. 2 fingers on his right hand remained taped from the ballroom. He noticed me looking and placed the hand flat on the table. They said the fractures healed cleanly, he said. Good. Do you mean that? Yes. I needed you to drop the blade. I did not need your hand ruined. He laughed once without humor. You always know the correct amount now. Only in a physical threat. Everything else is still difficult. That must disappoint Dad. A lot of things disappoint him lately. Silence filled the room. Ethan rubbed the tape with his thumb. I knew you were alive before you came back, he said. You saw the recording. I did. I did not know what he had done to you. He told me Eleanor had hidden you after a family dispute. He said she planned to bring you back when the company was vulnerable. And that made the false reports acceptable? His eyes lifted to mine. No. I keep trying to explain without making it sound like an excuse. Then explain the decision, not why I should forgive it. He absorbed that. Every adult around me treated succession like oxygen. Dad praised me when I won and went silent when I failed. Mom loved me, but she was terrified the family could be taken from us. When Dad said blood would beat adoption, I believed becoming useful was the only way to remain his son. Then you arrived and did not even want what I had spent my life earning. I hated you more for that. You thought my refusal made your sacrifice meaningless. Yes. His mouth tightened. And Maya looked at you as if you were a person. She looked at me as if I were a system she had already understood. She looked at you as a person too. That is why her no mattered. He stared at the tabletop. I know that now. Knowing it does not make me less ashamed. Shame is not accountability. My therapist says that. Your therapist sounds expensive. For the first time, we both smiled, though neither smile lasted. Ethan pushed a sealed envelope across the table. This is not for Maya. It is a list of every account I used to alter your records, every person I asked, and every place Dad told me evidence was stored. My attorney has a copy. Giving it to you does not improve my agreement. I did not touch it. Why give it to me? Because you should not have to wonder whether I kept one more knife behind my back. A list cannot guarantee that. No. I took the envelope. It was not trust. It was verifiable information that could become one small reason for trust later. Mom visits me, he said. She does not talk about you unless I ask a factual question. I used to think that meant you had turned her against me. Now I think it means she finally stopped using one of us to manage the other. That is what I asked her to do. Are you going to forgive her? That is between her and me. He nodded. Right. The 40-minute timer showed 6 minutes remaining. Are we brothers? Ethan asked. The question had no red line and no exact measure. Biology did not make us brothers, I said. A press announcement did not make us brothers. What happened between us made us two people tied to the same damage. If there is anything after that, it will come from choices neither of us can force. So not yet. Not yet. He looked hurt, but he did not bargain. When the timer ended, I stood. Ethan remained seated. Lucas, he said. I paused at the door. You could have killed me in that ballroom. Yes. Why did the power stop you? It did not. I held his gaze. It showed me when stopping became possible. I still had to choose it. Outside the clinic, I opened the envelope with my attorney present. Every account on Ethan's list matched an event Maya and I had already traced, except one storage location that led investigators to the surviving backup of Richard's orders. Ethan's information changed the case. That made it useful. His willingness to provide it changed my understanding of him. That made it a beginning, not a pardon. 6 months after the gala, Helena asked to attend a small ceremony at the Lake Estate. The company was transferring the original project journals and discs to the independent trust before lawful destruction of the biometric copies. Eleanor would be there. So would Maya. Ethan would not. His treatment team and the no-contact conditions made that inappropriate. I agreed, with one condition. The ceremony would not name me heir. The old study looked different in spring. The sheets were gone. Sunlight reached the floor. On the desk sat the metal case Eleanor had opened the day she told me about the veil condition. An independent archivist checked each item against a list, then carried the research materials out. The black authentication disc remained because its storage required my decision. It contained no unique evidence that had not already been preserved. Eleanor looked at it. Your great-grandfather believed these records belonged to the bloodline. Bloodlines do not own people, I said. Maya placed a small destruction unit on the desk. It would crush the contacts and memory layers while recording the process for the case file. Ready? She asked. I picked up the disk. It was lighter than I remembered. Richard had built years of suffering around an object that barely weighed more than a coin. When I turned it between my fingers, the interface stirred at the edge of my vision, not as a threat but as awareness. I could see where the disk would crack. I could also set it down and leave. Helena stood across the room, hands empty. She did not ask to share the moment. Eleanor did not offer advice. I placed the disk in the unit and closed the lid. Do it, I told Maya. She rested her finger on the control. Your decision, not mine. I covered her hand with mine and pressed with her. The machine made one hard sound. When we opened it, the disk had split into dull fragments. The first time I saw that case, I thought my family history had trapped me inside a weapon. Now the broken pieces looked like what they had always been: material, limited, and unable to choose anything. We walked outside together. At the edge of the estate, the lake moved under bright wind. Helena stopped several steps behind us. Lucas, she said, may I hug you today? I turned. For months, she had kept every condition I set. She had testified without asking me to praise her. She had visited Ethan without carrying his apologies to Maya or me. She had learned to let two sons face different consequences without turning either one into proof against the other. I opened one arm. Today, I said. She came close slowly. The hug was careful and brief. It did not restore 22 years. It did not need to pretend it could. When she stepped away, she was crying, but she did not use the tears to hold me there. Maya waited by the stone path. I joined her, and she slipped her hand into mine. Where now? She asked. The old version of me would have looked back at the house before answering. He would have checked whether Helena needed more, whether Eleanor approved, whether the family name still had a place ready for him. I looked toward the road instead. Home, I said. Maya squeezed my hand, and we walked away before anyone else could decide what that word meant.